I'm just letting Ben depart, and then we'll, or his father depart. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for staying behind. I appreciate it. This is my second time doing this presentation. As I said in my intro, or the little teaser that I gave during the service, my intent is to keep this to 30 minutes, although I'm more than happy to answer any questions that might come up afterwards. A people that values its privileges above its principles soon loses both. The title of my talk today is A Tale of Two Cities, and let's get right into a video clip that I want to share with you. And now we have our first test. Where did Mark go? Mark? I'm sorry. We've got to get the audio here fixed. My apologies. Is Mark in the room? Mark, we don't have any video or audio. I'm sorry. We'll start this all over. So I'm taking 34 minutes. My apologies. Mark, do you want me to go to the slide that has the... They can't hear. My apologies. We'll just get this, Mark, because I'm sure working on it right now. Yes, you can. I'm sorry?
I closed the presentation.
You closed it? No, it's right there.
I mean, like, ended the show.
Oh, that's fine. So we'll go back to the beginning. So you think we're live? Do you want me to try it?
Try it.
Okay, so we better do play.
It's supposed to be stand here?
Yes. All right. All right, let's do a take two. Are we glad the Holy Spirit's here? He allows us to make mistakes. Thank you, Mark. Bless you. One more time. Thanks so much for staying afterwards. As I said in the little teaser, my intent is to keep this to half an hour, but I'm more than willing to answer any questions at the end. I'd like to open with a quote from Dwight Eisenhower. A people that values its privileges above its principles soon loses both. Let me go right into a video clip I want to share with you.
Sure. There you are. Hurry. Your dad's going to get your picture. Look. Look. Where you go.
That's
there
my son,
go.
Ted, 4 years old.
There.
With his grandfather behind him.
Are you going to sleep out here, Teddy?
Not for now.
Not for now.
Oh.
I can do it.
Oh, you can do it yourself. Can you?
18 years later.
We've got Ted Livingston with Unsynced, with the Unsynced Media Player.
Have you ever been, that was good. Have you ever been in the car and you're listening to the radio and a song comes on you? You start dancing in the car, you turn up the volume, you're like, yeah, I like this song. I got to get this song when I get home. Or, have you ever been at a bar and you're out with friends and you're having a great time and you all get on the dance floor, like I'm sure some of you probably will later, and you're all, you start dancing and you're saying, yo man, what is this song? I love this song. Oh, it's a new Black Eyed Peas song. I got a feeling. I got to get this song when I get home. Or, have you ever been at a concert and you're there with friends and this band, you're standing in the crowd and you're thinking, this song is amazing. This band is going to go huge. I got to get this song when I get home. Have you ever thought, I got to get this song when I get home?
I show you those two clips to tell you how much can happen in 18 years. 6,574 days. That's all 18 years is. It will come and go so quickly. Good afternoon, my name's Bob Livingston, as you know. I'm married to a beautiful woman, Laurel Ann Hobbs, who is not only a beautiful woman and a great wife, but a fantastic mother for our 4 boys. My eldest son, Michael, is a 4th-year medical student at Western Ontario, currently trying to get into surgery and going through the tour duty to finally get a posting. You saw Ted. Ted graduated from high school, went to the University of Waterloo in the Megatronics Co-op program, and his last year he decided to start his own business, a company called Kik. We're all too old in this room, I imagine, to understand what text messaging is all about, but Kik became one of the premier text messaging companies in the world, actually. My 3rd son, Blair, is currently in Germany on a co-op exchange program with Wilfrid Laurier. As I say to people, if I come back, I want to come back as one of my kids. And lastly, our young son, Jack, unfortunately had a stroke in the pregnancy and requires 24/7 care. But I will tell you, Jack has taught our family more than anybody can imagine. We are wonderfully blessed to have him as part of our family. Some people ask, how did I get here and why do I do talks like this? As I said earlier, my motivation is quite simple. It expands my comfort zone. It's my way of giving back to the community, and most importantly, I'm having fun doing it. About a year ago, I was having lunch with a client. We were talking about our children somehow, and children in general, and we talked about the sense of entitlement that the next generation seems to have and the lack of responsibility that same generation seems to have. As I went away, I mulled over this and thought, a tale of 2 cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. A city called in London and a city in Paris. Well, I renamed those cities, as I mentioned earlier, to a city called responsibility and a city called entitlement. Because we clearly are in a world today where we do have this sense of entitlement and lack of responsibility. We definitely have a tale of 2 cities. About 2 years ago, I began to start writing papers and doing presentations on 2 different topics. One, personal development, and one, wealth management. The personal development is where I speak to grade 12 students as they walk out the door to whatever they're going to do post-high school. And I do speak also to university students in business class and business conferences, rather, on personal development. I also speak on wealth management to existing potential clients or clients in retirement about wealth management. And when I wrote this paper and started thinking about it, I believe if you understand what personal development can do for you, maybe just to back up for 2 seconds, what is personal development? Personal development is essentially understanding what your operating DNA is. It helps you establish your values and understand your skills and become the person you are meant to be. For heaven's sakes, it allows you to discover your passion, which might not be entirely consistent with your parents, what they figure your passion is, but that is what life is all about. If you go through the personal development process, one of the outcomes, I believe, on it is that you will discover your values. You will discover responsible values. Now, on the wealth management side, I think if you properly understand what wealth management can do for you, is you achieve financial independence. Financial independence to me means you're managing the money rather than the money managing you. Very important. It doesn't mean you don't have debt. It means the debt is appropriate and manageable. It means that you have a good work ethic, as I call it the revenue line, and fiscal responsibility, the expense line. That's all financial independence is. But you have to be taught it. I don't think it's something that comes naturally. So what do I hope to accomplish in the next 25 minutes? I hope, first of all, that I'm not here to tell you what to do. What you choose to do is entirely up to you. Whether you read my paper, discuss it with your spouse, discuss it with your family, that's your call, not mine. I'm not here to tell you I've been the perfect parent. No one is. I'm not here to tell you I haven't made my mistakes. We've all made mistakes. What I am here to do is to tell you that for parents with young families, they have an awesome chance in the next 6,574 days to have a tremendous experience, to actually put their footprint on the world to make it a better place. And that's what I'm here to do. So I encourage people to reflect. When I speak to university students, I say, you know, in my generation, it was pretty simple. You worked hard and you played hard. We've added a third part to this generation. You've got to work hard, play hard, think smart. You've got to think smart. You can't just let the tide carry you along wherever it may go. You've got to think smart. So I ask parents today in the audience, or the grandparents, or anybody who has an ability to touch a life, get those parents to think smart. My paper today, I'm going to talk about the two cities, a city called responsibility and a city called entitlement. I'm going to talk about the important role parents play. I'm going to give you a roadmap to responsibility. I'm going to talk about cell phones. Cell phones are just this innocuous little thing that has sort of crept in on us that makes such an important part of where your kids end up. I was fortunate. My eldest, Michael, cell phones really weren't around. I made lots of mistakes with the other two. And then I'm going to finally conclude with something I call the last word. And the last word is I will share with you my mistakes, all four of them. I got a holy revelation moment on the way to church today for a fourth just written in. I also will share with you how do you pull all this material together in terms of getting started. So let's start. A city called responsibility. By the way, in my presentations you will see no bullets and 9 quotes. That's all. That's the way Steve Jobs does it, and he's the best in the business. That's the way I do it. The greatest gifts you can give your children are the roots of responsibility and the wings of independence. When I talk about the city called responsibility, I'll talk about the journey to the city called responsibility, the characteristics of those living in the city called responsibility, and lastly, the rewards for those living in a city called responsibility. In both the journey to responsibility and entitlement, the journey is almost as important as it produces the actual result. The journey to responsibility teaches your children to establish their values, achieve financial independence, and develop a caring attitude. It is so important. It starts at an early age. It's modeled to us by our parents. It comes through dealing with life's challenges. It's a journey that you learn on the go how to get there. Once you're in a city called responsibility, what are the characteristics? Now, there's a lot of characteristics I don't go through in my talk today. They're all in the paper. But the top 3 characteristics are they have well-established values. They understand that values are the cornerstone of life in terms of your walk. Improper values will get you into all sorts of trouble. They have responsible values. Integrity is at the core of their values. But there's many other values that go around that. They've also achieved financial independence. They know there's a revenue line. They know there's an expense line. They have fiscal responsibility. They have a good work ethic. Those are all characteristics of people living there. And lastly, they care for other people. They genuinely have a soft heart for other people. They recognize that whatever problems they have in life, somebody's got one bigger than them. Zig Ziglar says it best, you can get everything in life you want if you help other people get what they want. So those are the characteristics of the people living in responsibility. I mentioned earlier the rewards. The rewards for living in responsibility are very obvious. So you wonder why more people wouldn't want to live there. The rewards for living in responsibility, my opinions, they tend to be good parents. They tend to have a good marriage. Challenging perhaps, but good. They tend to be team leaders in the workforce. They tend rather to be well paid within the existing structure that they work in. And lastly, they achieve through time a career, not a job. I'm very fortunate. I work at a firm called McLean Budden. I manage money for private clients. I have around 75 families that I manage money for. I have achieved what I call a professional hobby. Unless you have any concern about that term, think back to the gold medal game when Sidney Crosby scored that overtime goal. Do you honestly think he was thinking about the endorsements when he put the puck in the net? No. He had a professional hobby in that moment. He cared about what he was doing. Let's talk about the other city, a city called entitlement. Some people are born on third base and go through life thinking they hit a triple. I showed that to Michael, my son. He said, "Who's Barry Switzer?" I said, "I'm not sure." He actually was a coach for the Dallas Cowboys. I like the quote, though. It's so true. Some people think that they are entitled because where they were born. How wrong is that? So again, let's go through the same process as we did with responsibility. The journey to entitlement. Guess what? Poor values, shallow values, what I call chameleon values. They deal with the situation as it needs to be dealt with, and the next day they have a different set of values. They are financially dependent, and quite frankly, they're quite selfish. They don't listen well, they're petulant, they have all these other attributes. These are not good things. How do they learn how to get to a city called entitlement? Well, lest we forget, it starts with the parents. It's learned at an early age, it's modeled to us by our parents. It comes with hidden risks, not obvious risks. So it's something you want to avoid. What about the characteristics for those living in entitlement? Again, there are more in the paper, but the top three that I looked at was, first of all, they have shallow values. They establish their values on the outside and practice them on the inside, changing daily according to the weather report. Isn't that unfortunate? They tend to be financially dependent. They've been raised that someone else is always taking care of their expenses, so all of a sudden the well goes dry and then they start blaming people. They become petulant and ultimately they self-destruct. And lastly, they are selfish. They really don't care about other people, except as Jack Frost would say, with a hook. If they care about other people, there's a hook involved. It's something because their agenda needs to be fulfilled, not the other person's. Let's talk about the role of parents. If you raise your children to feel they can do anything, you will have given them the greatest of all blessings, Brian Tracy. Now, he wasn't a football coach. He's a motivational speaker. I think the most important role parents have is establishing the vision they have for their children and their family. Now, unfortunately, establishing a vision is sort of like thinking of infinity. It's not an easy topic to get your head around. And so most people just walk away from it. They don't establish the vision. Here are 3 easy steps, I think, to establish your vision for your family and your children. First of all, what are your dreams? So establish your dreams. What are your goals? So define your goals. And lastly, what are the plans? So create your plans. Dreams, goals, and plans. Now, the way I put it is a dream is a what-if wish. A goal is a what-can-be statement. And a plan is a what-must-be-done commitment. Each time gets a little more difficult, requires a little more work. The reality is a goal without a plan will remain but a dream. Dreams are up there. Moving to goals, they are dreams with a deadline. You're starting to bring some process to it. Once you have your goals, then you must have plans to make sure those goals happen. So, goals are required to fulfill your dreams. Plans are required to fulfill your goals. It's not complicated. It's not complicated. So that's the first role of parents, I believe, and that is to establish the vision. The second role of parents is to be a good role model. The most important role model you show your children is the love for your spouse. It's so, so important that they know that you fully love her, respect her, and value her opinion. I'm speaking to the husband, of course. But, of course, it goes the other way, too, a wife for her husband. This is something that I did not fully do. And I repent for that. I think it's something that you really have to get your head around, that your kids will see all this. If you think otherwise, you're a fool. And believe me, they'll figure it out well before their teen years when the real challenges set in. The second important role for parents is to be on the same page when it comes to communication, respect, and the plan. And I appreciate this is challenging, but it also is probably even more important for parents that are divorced. Just because you're no longer husband and wife, you've got to be on the same page as parents. My opinion, I've seen it happen, you know, where somebody becomes vindictive, and that is just, you're putting your children at risk by doing that. So I appreciate it's difficult. I can't speak from first-hand experience, but you've got to be on the same page. You know, the way I put it is, by the age of 2, even though they can't talk, you can rest assured your children are looking for those seams of miscommunication between the parents so they can drive their engine called rebellion right through. You better believe it. And if you don't get this down early, wait till you get to the teen years. So a lot of this is sowing and reaping. You sow well, you'll reap well. If you sow badly, you'll reap badly. The third important role parents have is they are to be a good teacher. It's very, very important that teaching, you've got to understand the subject. If I was a young parent, you better go figure out what text message is all about. Don't ignore it. It's part of life, of their life. They're going to come and ask you at age 10 for a cell phone. You better have a plan in place. You better understand what the costs are involved and what the risks are involved with all this stuff. This is a scary area that, you know, the whole computer games and internet, for the most part, we didn't have to deal with as parents. Late part we did. But it was, you know, the cell phones weren't around in 1990 when our kids were early in school. So I think, you know, the role of the role of providing a good model, being a good teacher. Let me give you an example, because I think there's 2 important roles parents must fulfill as teachers. They must teach their children good values, good responsible values, and they must teach their children financial independence. My personal opinion, if you accomplish those 2 goals, there is a 90% chance your kids will end up in responsibility. If you fail to accomplish those 2 goals, there's a 60%, not quite as high, a 60% chance they'll end up in entitlement. They might actually be able to pull themselves out of the deep dive you put them in. So there's not as high a probability of entitlement. Good example that I share with people that they seem to like is when my kids turned 5 or 6 years old, I decided that intuitively I was going to teach them how to manage money. Now, I don't give myself an A+. My students lacked a little to be desired, but I think that part of it they seem to understand now at their age. And it was a very simple, innocuous little plan. The Royal Bank was having a promo. It was called Leo the Lion. If you walked in and opened an account, they gave you $5 for free to open the account. They put $5 in the account. And I thought, well, this is a great deal. So I grabbed Michael, our eldest, marched down to the bank, opened an account in his name, and said to him, Michael, we're going to come back every year for the next 10 years, i.e. till you're 16 years old, and we'll do it around this time. It was January. We'll do it at this time of year. And your mother and I will match whatever you save over the previous year. Now, the game was pretty cheap to start with. By the time they became teenagers, they figured out the game pretty quickly. And by the way, there was a clawback provision. They couldn't just go in, get the bonus, and then 3 days later take the money back out. And it did get a little challenging with Access ATM cards on the loose, and I had to make a few changes. But the point here is a creative plan. I bumped into somebody. I was talking in the store. He says, oh, no, I don't need to do that. We already have accounts in the kid's name. He's missing the point. The point is you're taking the time, the patience, the journey. By the time they got to 16, by the way, they all had at least $2,000 in their bank account. Irrelevant from what they learned on the journey was the more important thing. They learned the ability to save, budget, immediate versus delayed gratification, philanthropy, et cetera, et cetera. Those are all wonderful benefits. The $2,000 was just a rounding error in terms of the process. So those are some of the things. I do believe parents are 90%, if not higher, responsible for which city the kids end up in. You know, so when we're sitting there at the lunch table, Look in the mirror, Bob. Look in the mirror of the person I was sitting with. You know, both good and bad, of course. So let's just quickly talk about the roadmap to responsibility. I love quotes. The reason is I think a quote paints a picture better than a whole bunch of bullets. Nothing against the previous speaker. Dreams require imagination. Goals require inspiration. Plans require perspiration. You know what? 6,574 days. Surely to God you can have some imagination. You can have some inspiration because there will be lots of perspiration. Believe me. I think the roadmap to responsibility, there's two parts. I don't think you're going to be surprised at this. Help your kids establish their values and help your kids establish their financial independence. I'm not going to go away. Those are the two topics. You can get those down. If you walk away with nothing else, you're on your way. How do you get your kids to establish their values? Well, first of all, you start with your own. Write a parent mission statement. Write a parent mission statement. You know, when you go flying, and, you know, no one listens, but I listened one time, and if the plane decompresses and the oxygen masks pop out, they always say to you, if you're traveling with young children, put your mask on first, and then put the child's mask on. Well, it's the same thing when it comes to values. Put your value mask on first, know where you stand, and then you can teach your children. So go ahead and do that. Obviously, a personal mission statement should include the well, not obviously. I've written the paper. I know it's obvious. Personal mission statement should include, what are your core philosophies in life? What is your operating DNA? What are your core values in life? As a parent mission statement, what is your commitment as a parent? What time are you prepared to commit? What are you trying to accomplish with your dreams, goals, and plans? And this is where probably 98% won't do it. Yours included, myself included. Put it in writing. You don't have to write a treatise, but you know what? You'll be in the 2% minority, and you will probably move up from 90 to 98% responsibility where your kids end up. By putting it in writing, you take it to a whole different level. I can tell you that from my personal development speeches and stuff. When I started putting it in writing, it took it to a different level. Parent mission statement. Family value statement. What do we stand for as a family? I will declare I have not written one of these. I will also declare in my paper I said I did. My wife gave me conviction this morning that I've got to change that part. A family value statement. What are your basic values? Ours would have been as follows. Integrity will be the cornerstone of our family value statement. We will respect everybody regardless of race, religion, sex, whatever. We will honor, children will honor their parents, and parents will respect their kids. It's meant to be a two-way flow, not just one way. And lastly, we will help others who are not as fortunate as we are. Look, there's no wrong answers on this stuff, but write it out yourself so you and your spouse have an opportunity to discuss these questions. And lastly, practice philanthropy as a family. Quick story. I think this is pre-TACF for our family. We walked down the street. Laurel and I talked about it at Christmas. We wanted to sponsor another family. And so we walked down to our local church. They gave us the name of a family. There was a 12-year-old and 10-year-old, two parents. Father was unemployed. For the most part, I went out, which is a mistake. I should have had my kids more involved, although Michael was only 6 at the time. And this is how times change. We got her a Sony Walkman for the girl. Now, that goes way back. And I forget what we bought for the son, but we also bought the parents' gifts, and we bought a fully dressed dinner for the family. And then Michael, Ted, my father, Bill Livingston, and myself, we delivered it to a high-rise, sort of not so friendly part of town. I'm glad my father was there. And I think this is a fantastic way of practicing philanthropy as a family. And my only regret is we only did it once. I wish we had done it 5 or 6 times because, you know, the reality is the kids would not really have picked up the full benefit till around the 4th or 5th time, and that's nothing against them. That's just how life works. So that's the values. In terms of how to teach your kids financial independence, I think first of all, you've got to have some skin in the game. The kids have to have some skin in the game, and this is where I was completely wrong. I wanted my kids, for instance, to go to university and have that perfect world. Laurel, when she went to university, there was no money, so she paid her own way through. Now, to be fair, having the money means you have a decision. Not having the money means there's no decision. You either don't go or you pay your own way. But it's much more difficult having the money. And I'll share a quick story with you. I was out one day, and it was late, 10:30 at night, or 10 o'clock at night, I guess. I went to the local metro to do some last-minute grocery shopping. And there's this young kid sort of doing the checkout. And I said, my gosh, shouldn't you be at home doing your homework? And he said, no, I work 12 hours a week. I'm 16, and I want $200 hockey sticks for my competitive hockey that I play. And my parents said, we'll split the cost with you. So I have to pay for my half of the hockey tickets. Earlier in the day, I was having my teeth cleaned by the hygienist, and you don't get many words in when the hygienist is cleaning your teeth. So she was telling me her story. Quite the opposite. She was talking about her niece who had signed up for skiing this year, and part of the requirements were to buy 2 new pairs of skis at $1,000 each. Well, that's the price of admission, and the parents decided she was going to ski, so nobody really had a problem with that. But she also needed a new helmet for a variety of reasons. Now, the basic helmet was around $250. The designer helmet was $500. The parents said, no. They understood the game. They understood the responsibilities and the decision. They said, no, we're not getting the designer helmet. We'll get you the basic standard helmet. Well, let me tell you, teenagers can be pretty petulant, pretty persistent, and really whiny. The parents took a week, but they capitulated. So guess which kid has a good chance of getting to responsibility? The guy playing hockey. And guess which one has a good chance of going to a city called entitlement? The skier. I'm not doing this sexist-wise. It just happens those are the two stories. I think it's so important parents must practice tough love. Tough love is sometimes required. You know, you've done it all right. You've done the budgets. I'll give you an example. I won't mention which one, but one of our kids, one of the things I believe in strongly as parents is I've redefined, and I'll talk about this in a minute, but I've redefined how I define success. I define success as discover your passion, commit to be the best you can at it, and share it with others. I define achieving significance for a parent is allow your kid to discover his or her passion. Once they discover it, assuming you're on side with it, and have some wide ranges on it. I mean, here's Ted, doing this thing at 23 that I just shake my head at times, but you know what? It's his passion. He's running a business. He's having a gas doing it. But as a parent, to achieve significance, allow your kids to discover their passion, but then commit the resources, your resources, mainly financial, although also advice, to help them be the best they can at it, and encourage them to share it with others. I'm not sure it's the toughest love you're going to see in the world, but one of my sons decided he wanted to write a CFA. It cost $1,000. I wrote the check. For a variety of reasons, he decided he didn't want to write it, but there was no refunds available. He paid for half. I said, I want a check back for half. And you know what? He understood. And the last thing, and it should have been at the first of all this, is allowance is meant to be a privilege, not a right. Establish this early. If you do not establish it early, you're just going to be walking down a road. They'll be asking, you know what? If you don't teach them these things, they're just going to ask for more money. So why wouldn't they? Put yourself in their shoes. If you give it to them, they're going to ask for it, and then they're going to ask for more. I didn't do this, but I think it's a great idea. Split your allowance a third, a third, a third. A third savings, a third consumption, and a third philanthropy, whatever it may be. Get them thinking early that there's more to the world than just them. It's only a cell phone. Beware of the little expenses. A small leak will sink a great ship, Benjamin Franklin. Cell phones are one of those little innocuous things that come along, and if you don't get your strategy down right and think about it, it's going to come back and bite you year in, year out. The industry has subtly convinced us that if we don't buy our kids a cell phone, we don't love our children. Our children have not so subtly convinced their parents that it is their right to have a cell phone because the only way they can communicate with their friends. Now, there's some truth to both these statements. Somehow, though, we moved from the basic cell phone plan for $40 a month to a fully entitled BlackBerry plan, which is more than my wife even has, at $110 a month. Let me share a story with you. When Blair, my third son, by the time you know what, in life there's 3 ways to learn from mistakes. There's the easy way to learn from someone else's mistakes. There's the hard way to learn from your mistakes. And then there's a tragic way to learn from no one's mistakes. So I'm going to give you an easy way to deal with cell phones. When Blair went to university, now I had mucked it up completely with Teddy. I won't bore you with the story. I'd just done it all wrong. Sitting there trying to do accounting and chasing him down for money. It was ridiculous. So here's what I did. Blair was 17 at the time, could not get his own Visa card, so we went down to the bank. We got a Visa card in my name with a second card in Blair's name. I made it extremely clear to the bank that the limit would be $500 and no more. If anything more than that went on the card, the bank would be responsible, not myself. I then turned to Blair and said, Blair, I'm taking my card and cutting it in half. This is essentially your card, and I'm risking $500 on this experiment. But if this card goes into default, this is the last time you'll have a credit card with my name on it. Now, Blair, the second question. Do you want a cell phone? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I picked out the BlackBerry plan I want. I said, well, before we go there, let me just tell you where I stand. In consultation with your mother, which is a bit of a lie, but she trusted me on this. We're both going the same direction value-wise. I said, I've done some analysis on cell phones, and the basic plan costs around $40 a month. So while you're at university, we will give you a check in terms of all the other expenses we pay for $40 will be included for the cell phone. The cell phone bill will go through your Visa card that we've got. All of a sudden, I have no responsibility. I'm $40. Blair's on the hook. Do that. Make sure your kids have some skin in the game when it comes to cell phones. If you don't, you're going to run down all of a sudden, and usually it's dad. The kids are now teenagers. It's totally out of control. The bill is $400 or $500 a month, and you think I'm exaggerating. Just wait till you get there. And then dad says, that's it. I don't want them anymore. And the wife says, you can't do that. And then you get into a huge rhubarb. And you know what? We had a case like this with one of our groups, and we said, the father has to go home and say, I made a mistake, and I am going to fix it. And so I encourage you, like, it's only a cell phone. It's probably one of the most important decisions you're going to make in terms of just that little thing, how you deal with it. So let's go to the last word. The only place success comes ahead of work is in the dictionary. My father, William Ross Livingston. How many times did I hear that when I was a kid? Many, many times. Matter of fact, the only place money comes ahead of work is in the dictionary also. Pretty consistent. You get W. There's a lot of things that come ahead of work. I want to share with you my mistakes. I want to try to pull this together in terms of getting started. What would I do if I were in your shoes? And lastly, then I want to just put this all in perspective. So, my mistakes. As I mentioned to you earlier, on the way to church, one of the primary mistakes I made, probably the most important mistake, biggest mistake I made, was not listening to my wife. Your wife is meant to complete, not to compete with you. She's meant to be your doubles partner, not your singles opponent. It's so important that you get on the same page, that you view her as an ally. Now, to be fair, there were probably some things my wife suggested that were not necessarily good ideas, but I wasn't listening to anything. So the good and the bad both got thrown out. I will tell you one example of which I was dead wrong and she was dead right. Computers were just coming into vogue as our kids hit high school. The school, the industry, society convinced us that every kid must have a computer in their bedroom to do their education better. Mistake. Big mistake. If they do need a computer in their bedroom, and that's something you want, and my wife this is where she was coming from, like they shouldn't be in the bedroom. I would say if you must have a computer in the bedroom for your children, disconnect the internet. Just disconnect it. You do not know what's going on in the internet out there. You have no idea. Just no idea. You have no idea. I have a friend who was an undercover cop, and he said, Bob, parents have no idea. It is one dirty cesshole out there. So your kids are going to come back and complain, we can't do our projects because we can't access the internet. Wrong. We have a computer in the family room. Everybody can see it. We can trace where you've been. That will be your internet tool. You're not going to spend hours at night on MSN Messenger or whatever system you're using. You know, and a side shoot to this, especially with boys, is computer games. You know, I thought about this in the way out. Television to my generation was the babysitting vehicle that my parents used. Computer games is the babysitting is what this generation's using. And there will television, a walk in the park compared to computer games. a walk in the park. In terms of other mistakes, let me just get to my notes here. Discipline. When I was a young boy, my parents practiced love, or raised us rather, with love, discipline, and control. We all sort of fight what we did in our youth, and so when it came my turn to be a parent, well, love was an obvious one. That was going to stay. Control, yeah, control I didn't have a problem with. But discipline, no. No, come on, let's lighten up. Let's give them a little more laissez-faire. Mea culpa, huge mistake on my part as a father. Because what it did is it forced my wife into a role that she didn't want, and there would come a time which she was not equipped to do. And I don't mean that anything negative against Laurel. But especially with teenagers, especially with teenager boys, they must have the discipline from their father. Gloria Steinem says it best, in today's society, children suffer from too much mother and not enough father. So discipline is clearly an area fathers have to step in and be part of. Control, I think we would all say we want for our children, we want them to be happy. What happens is we then say, well, if they're successful, they will be happy. Albert Einstein, who's got a far higher IQ than I would ever have in my life, said, success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. So what we have to do is go back and define how we define success. I will admit to you, as a father, I define success pretty simplistically. I wanted my kids to have what I had, plus 10%, just in case any inflation crept in. So in other words, I want them to have the golf club. I want them to have the ski membership. I want them to be able to go to a school. I want them to go on trips, blah, 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 blah. I want them to have what I had, plus 10%. And of course, we all think we know the best route to get there. This is where I think you have to go back and redefine success. As I said earlier, success to me is to allow them to discover their passion, they commit to be the best they can at it, and encourage them to share it with others. So important. I've got 3 kids and Jack, God bless him, but the 3 older boys going in completely different directions, all with the same values. And I think it's so neat. The last mistake is communication. I think our previous speaker would probably tell you why men don't communicate well. Well, I just fit right into that 98% group. Communication is so important. You have to be on the same page. If you can't be on the same page with your wife, what do you think your kids are going to do? Divide and conquer. You better believe it. Divide and conquer. So I encourage you to be on the same page. And lastly, so in taking control of the process, not lastly, one other part here. I said earlier, I think it's important to establish your dreams. Here's 2 dreams to establish that I suggest, and there's no wrong dreams, by the way. The only wrong answer is not to write down 2. Help in terms of establishing their dreams, help them achieve a fulfilling life, and help them realize their potential, whatever they've been given in life to be. Those are dreams. Those are pretty nice, wide open statements. Define your goals. Remember we talked about goals earlier? A what can be statement. 2 goals, surprise. Help your children achieve responsible values. Help your children achieve financial independence. Plans. Plans are needed to fulfill the goals. A plan is a what must be done commitment. Commitment, time, patience, hard work, all those things. In this case, the 3 I've recommended, and I've just sort of cherry-picked from a number that I have in the paper, but have an allowance with a purpose. Don't just give them the money. Make sure they understand why they're being given the money. And you know what? This will take time. It will occur. Friction will occur. You know, the family next door doesn't do it that way. My father used to say, well, that might be the case, but this is the Livingston family, not the family next door. So important. And practice philanthropy as a family. This is not complicated. It costs a couple $100. In the spectrum of Christmas, that's not really that bad. But it takes time. It takes planning. It takes work. It takes time to get an 8-year-old to want to drive over on a Sunday afternoon to deliver something. It probably he only clues in, if he does even at all, the 4th or 5th time you do it. As I said, the tragedy is, my regret is, I only did it once. We only did it once as a family. So remember that number, 6,574 days? In this brief journey, never forget love is a four-letter word spelled T-I-M-E. In this brief journey, you're not going to be a perfect parent. You're going to be learning on the fly like every other parent that did this. And you're going to make your fair share of mistakes. That's life. In this brief journey, don't forget the successes of your children because you're so focused on their failures. In this brief journey, recognize that you are so blessed to have children and be given the opportunity to become a family. I'm not sure if it was a paint commercial, but I like the way they put it. Isn't it neat when a house can become a home? So, so important. And in this brief journey, never forget the moment because the destination will come all too quickly. Now in finishing, and I hope I'm close to the half hour, in finishing I want to share with you something Ted wrote, you know, the guy that climbing the treehouse and then off to DevCon in 2009. He wrote, Ted doesn't like giving Christmas presents, he's declared. He likes writing cards, so he wrote a card to his mother and I and his three brothers and his girlfriend. I'm not sure who else got one. But this is just part of what he wrote in his card this year. Mom and Dad, we've only been given the chance to do the things we do and be the people we are because of God and because of the two of you. Life gets busy, and I'm sure that it feels like sometimes we're thinking the less of you. But Mom and Dad, that couldn't be further from the truth. Every day I sit and think about how I would never be where I am without parents exactly like you. And I'm sure Michael, Blair, and Jack do the same. Thank you for being such incredible parents. Thank you for believing in us and for giving us the opportunity to change the world in our own ways. Love, Ted. So I pray in closing that you recognize the opportunity that you've been given with children. I pray you recognize the responsibility that comes with this opportunity. And lastly, I pray somewhere down the road that one of your children will send a similar letter to you. Thank you. If there's any questions or you want to come and see me afterwards, I'm more than willing to answer them.